There is one number that separates the people who drown in debt from the people who get rich off it. And here is the strange part. It is not the size of the loan, it is not the interest rate. Two people can take out the exact same loan at the exact same rate on the exact same day, and one of them ends up buried while the other ends up richer than when they started. Same loan, same interest rate, opposite result. The difference is one number. By the end of this video, you will not only know what that number is, you will have run it yourself on your own situation. Because debt is not the problem. Using it like you are poor is the problem. Let me show you the number. Forget everything you have been told about debt for a second. At its core, a loan is nothing more complicated than renting money. You borrow a sum, you pay a fee for the time you hold it, and you give it back. That fee is the interest rate. That is the rent. So the only question that actually matters is this. When you take that rented money and put it to work, does it earn more than the rent costs? If the money you borrowed earns 7% and the rent on it is 4%, you just kept the difference. 3% on money that was never yours. That gap has a name. It is called the spread. And the spread is the entire game. Here is where it gets interesting, and here is the one number. Your return on your own money equals the spread, multiplied by how many dollars you control for every dollar of your own that you put in. Read that again. The spread is one part. The leverage, how many borrowed dollars you stack on top of yours, is the other. Multiply them together and you get the only number that matters, the return on your own cash. A rich person does not see a loan and think, how do I pay this back as fast as possible? They see a loan and think, what is the spread and how many dollars can I control with it? Same loan you are looking at. Completely different question. And throughout this video, I am going to keep coming back to this one number because every single trick you are about to see is just this equation with different inputs plugged in. One more thing before we start. A few of the 6 things I am about to show you, you can run yourself today with the money you already have. The other ones you cannot, at least not yet, and I will be honest with you about which is which as we go. I am not going to pretend a billionaire's tax strategy is something you can do on a Tuesday afternoon. But you need to see all of it because the small versions only make sense once you have seen the big ones. Let us start with the oldest trick there is, and one of the most accessible. It is called trade credit, and almost every product business on earth runs on it. Here is how it works. Say you want to sell pens. Simple product, steady demand. The textbook version is that you fly to a factory, you buy a container of pens with your own cash, you ship them, and you sell them. But that is the poor man's version because your own money is tied up in a pile of pens for months. The rich version is that you never pay for the pens up front. Manufacturers, especially overseas, will hand you the product on terms. Net 30, net 60, net 90. That means you get the pens now and you pay for them in 30, 60, or 90 days. They are lending you the product. They are your bank, and the product is the loan. Now run the one number on it. You sell the pens before the bill is even due. You take the money from your customers, you pay the factory, and you keep the difference. So what was your own cash in this deal? Nothing. Zero. You controlled an entire container of inventory with none of your own money, which means your leverage is not 5-to-1 or 10-to-1. It is infinite because you divided by 0 of your own dollars. The spread was small, just your markup per pen, but multiplied by infinite leverage, the return on your own cash is enormous. That is why selling is one of the most valuable skills on the planet. The seller never needed money. They needed terms. And here is the first one you can actually run. You do not need a factory in another country. Anyone who has ever sold something before paying for it has used trade credit. A 0% introductory card that floats your inventory, a supplier who gives you 30 days, a customer deposit that funds the job before you have spent a dime. Same mechanism, smaller scale. We will come back to the most accessible version of this near the end. Number 2 is real estate. And this is where most finance channels get the math flat out wrong. So let us actually run it. You find a property that costs $500,000. It is in rough shape, nobody wants it, which is exactly why it is cheap. You put 20% down, that is $100,000, and you take a mortgage for the other $400,000. Then you spend $50,000 fixing it up. So at this point, Your own money in the deal is $100,000 down plus $50,000 in renovation. $150,000 of your cash is sitting in this house. Now the property is fixed up and people actually want to live in it. The market value rises to $700,000. You go back to the bank and you refinance, pulling out a new loan at 80% of the new value. 80% of $700,000 is $560,000. You use that to pay off your original $400,000 mortgage, and you walk away with the difference, which is $160,000 in cash. Now, here's the part the other channels get wrong. They will tell you that $160,000 minus your $50,000 renovation is a $110,000 profit. That is not what happened, and the truth is actually better. You put $150,000 of your own cash in. You just pulled $160,000 back out, which means you got every dollar of your own money back, plus a little extra, and you still own a $700,000 property with roughly $140,000 of equity in it that you can now rent out. Run the one number. How much of your own cash is left in this deal at the end? 0. You took it all back out, so what is your return on your own money? You are not dividing by $150,000 anymore. You are dividing by nothing. That is an infinite return, and it is the real reason investors are obsessed with this strategy. It is not the profit. It is that you recycled your entire down payment and got to keep the asset. Now, let me be honest about the catch, because this is a math channel, not a hype channel. Your new loan is bigger. You went from owing $400,000 to owing $560,000, and at today's mortgage rates around 6%. That is a much larger monthly payment. On top of that, refinancing costs you another 2 to 5% in closing costs. So the whole thing only works if the rent covers that bigger payment with room to spare. The trick was never the refinance. The trick is finding a property that actually cash flows after all of it. That is the hard part, and that is the part nobody sells you a course on. This one is reachable, by the way, not billionaire territory. People with a lot less than you would guess do exactly this. Now we go up a level to the strategy behind every headline you have ever read about a billionaire who pays almost nothing in income tax. It is not a loophole someone snuck into the code. It is 3 ordinary rules stacked on top of each other, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. It is called buy, borrow, die. Step 1, buy. You own assets that go up in value. Stocks, a business, real estate. On paper, you are worth a fortune. But here is the thing about gains on paper. They are not taxed. You only owe tax when you sell. So the rich person's first rule is simple. Do not sell. Selling is what triggers the tax bill, but you still need money to live on, to buy things, to fund your life. So step 2, borrow. Instead of selling your stock and paying tax, you go to a bank or a brokerage and you borrow against it. This is a real product called a securities-backed line of credit. You pledge your portfolio as collateral and they hand you cash. And right now, the interest rate on these runs about 5.5% to 6.5%, with the lowest rates going to the biggest portfolios. Think about that against the one number. Your assets are growing around 7%. The loan against them costs around 6%. The spread is still positive, and you never sold a thing, so you never paid a dime of capital gains tax. And how much would that tax have been? If you had sold, the long-term capital gains rate climbs as high as 23.8% once you include the investment income surtax. So borrowing at 6% to avoid handing over almost 24% is not just convenient. It is the entire point. You are renting money for 6 to avoid a tax of 24. Then comes step 3, and this is the cold one: die. Under current law, when you pass away, your heirs inherit your assets at what is called a stepped-up basis. That means the gains you spent a lifetime never paying tax on are simply erased. The slate is wiped clean at market value. Your kids inherit the stock, the loan gets paid off from the estate, and the lifetime of growth that was never taxed never gets taxed. Ever. The government estimates this one rule costs about $41 billion a year in uncollected tax. And before you assume the estate just gets taxed instead, in 2026, the estate tax exemption is $15 million per person, $30 million for a married couple. So for almost everyone using this strategy, that final step is clean too. Buy, never sell. Borrow, live tax-free. Die. and the gains vanish. That is the machine. I am going to be straight with you. This one is not for you. Not today. You need a serious pile of appreciated assets before a bank writes you that line of credit. But I needed you to see it, because the small version of this exact idea is coming, and it is one you can run. So how does that loan against a portfolio actually work, and where does it go wrong? Because this is the engine running underneath the last strategy, and it has a dark side worth understanding. When you borrow against your investments, the lender does not give you $1 for every dollar you have. They give you somewhere between 50 and 95% of your portfolio's value, depending on what you hold, and they keep an eye on it. Because here is the risk. If the market drops and your collateral loses value, the lender can demand that you put up more cash or more stock immediately, or they sell your assets out from under you to cover the loan. That is called a margin call, and it is the thing that turns leverage from a tool into a trap. Leverage multiplies the one number in both directions. A positive spread gets multiplied into a fortune, a negative one gets multiplied into a disaster. And there is a version of this that is almost pure disaster, so let me show you the guardrail. It is called short selling, and it is borrowing in reverse. Instead of borrowing money, you borrow a share of stock, sell it immediately, and hope the price falls so you can buy it back cheaper and pocket the difference. When it works, you make money on a company going down. But here is why I am not giving it its own segment. When you buy a stock, the worst that can happen is it goes to zero, and you lose what you put in. When you short a stock, there is no ceiling. If the price keeps climbing, your losses keep climbing with no limit, and you still have to buy that share back at whatever it costs to return it. That is the version of debt that blows people up. Same equation, but the spread can go infinitely negative. I am showing it to you so you can recognize it and stay away from it. Now back down to earth to the most run-it-today trick in this entire video. This is the small-scale mirror of the very first one, the trade credit float. Except instead of a factory lending you pens, a credit card company is lending you cash at 0%. Right now, real balance transfer offers will give you 0% interest for 18 to 21 months. Some go to 24. There is usually a transfer fee of 3 to 5% upfront, and that fee is the only catch, so this is not technically free money. But run the one number on it. You are renting a chunk of money for around 3% total for nearly 2 years. If what you do with that money clears 3% over 2 years, which is a very low bar, you keep the spread. The honest, boring version of this trick is not some get-rich scheme. It is moving high-interest debt off a card charging you 24% and onto one charging you 0. The spread there is enormous because you are not earning 3%, you are erasing a 24% interest rate and paying 3% to do it. That is a guaranteed return that almost no investment can match. This is the one I want you to actually understand, because it is the same exact mechanism the importer used. Borrow cheap, deploy it, keep the difference. The only thing separating you from the pen seller is the size of the number. Which brings us to the sixth one, and it is the one absolutely everybody watching can move starting today. Look back at the one number. The spread is what the money earns minus what the money costs. Most people obsess over the earning side. The rich obsess over the cost side, because your interest rate is a number you can negotiate down, and every point you knock off the cost goes straight into the spread. This is leverage on top of leverage. Your credit score is the single biggest lever on what your money costs. The national average score right now is 715. The difference between a fair score and an excellent one can be several percentage points on every loan you ever take for the rest of your life. On a mortgage, on a car, on that business line of credit, those points compound into tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. The rich do not have access to some secret bank. They have access to cheaper money because they made themselves cheap to lend to. Everyone here can move this number, and unlike picking the right stock, improving it is almost entirely in your control. So let us collect what we have. I told you a few of these you could run yourself, and I pointed them out as we went. Here they are together, and here is how you run the one number on your own life right now. Start with the cost side, because it is the fastest win, and it costs you nothing. Pull your credit score this week, and find out what your money costs today. Every point you raise, it lowers the rent on every dollar you will ever borrow. That is Mechanism 6, and it is pure upside. Then look at the most powerful accessible move, the 0% arbitrage. If you are carrying a balance at a high interest rate right now, you are on the wrong side of the one number. You are the factory lending to the credit card company at 24%. Flip it. Move that balance to a 0% offer, pay a 3% fee instead of a 24% rate, and you have just turned a negative spread into a positive one. That is not theory. You could do that today. And the float the trade credit idea applies to anyone who sells anything or runs anything. Get paid before you have to pay. Take the deposit before you buy the materials. Use the 30 days the supplier gives you. Every time you do, your own cash in the deal drops, and the one number climbs, because you are dividing by less and less of your own money. Now run it. For every dollar of your own that you put into something, how many dollars are you actually controlling, and does what they earn beat what they cost? That is the number. The billionaire with the line of credit and you with a balance transfer are doing the same arithmetic. The only thing that changes is the size and the direction you point it. So here is the whole video in one line. The one number to keep. Debt is just rented money. And the only question that ever mattered is whether what you do with it earns more than the rent. Get that one inequality on the right side, and debt stops being the thing that owns you and becomes the thing you own. The poor pay debt off as fast as they can. The rich ask what the spread is and how many dollars they can control. Same loans, same rates, one number, and now you know it. If this changed the way you look at the loans in your own life, that is the whole point of this channel. We run the numbers so you do not have to take anyone's word for it. Subscribe, and next time I will show you the version of this you can actually scale step by step. I will see you then.